The numbers for the class changes, believe it or not, before the expansion even come out, are already in. There was a whole wave of class changes, this is not even all of them, that happened for the pre-patch in MoP. Basically, Cyrene changed every single class. People said it wasn't a big deal, and let me tell you, it is already a big deal. Your opinions on balance aside and the changes they are making, I am not here to debate on that. I just want to show you what happened to the meta, because people are still raiding Dragon Soul, and that actually means that we got data on the damage people are doing, and here it is. Now, some caveats. The monks are at the bottom not because they are bad, wanna make that clear. They are at the bottom because they do not have a tier set, okay? There is no tier set in Dragon Soul for monks, so they are missing their entire set. They can only take crappy Druid off pieces. Of course they are gonna suck, just wanna make that clear. Do not take the data of the monks seriously, because it is not good data. Now, having that said, we can see that the rogues are at the top. Now, I am not surprised. The rogue was always a top tier class in Dragon Soul, and if anything, they were one of the classes that got changed the least. They got a very small buff for assassination, and they got like a tiny readjustment on Sinister Strike. They got the cost lower and they got the damage lower, so it is like a give and take. It is not a huge change, but they are very well at the top. Now, Dragon Soul has several fights that really reward burst damage, and what's a better class for burst damage than the rogue? Of course they are gonna top that, so you also gotta keep that in mind. Fight design plays a huge role in parses, in more modern expansions. Us coming from vanilla, we don't understand that very well because we just hit the boss until it dies, but a fight can very much determine the balance of the classes in that raid. Now, the second biggest class, and this is actually quite a shocker, this is the biggest winner in all of these changes, and that's the Shadow Priest, which is absolutely freaking nasty. We know that the Shadow Priest in Cataclysm was one of the best cleavers in the game, and by no means they were bad. They were not bad before, but they were never a top contender like they are right now. Now, there was a lot of changes to the Priest because Shadow Orbs were completely different in Cataclysm. They completely reworked it for MoP, and on top of that, Blizzard made a change that you can start every single pool with maximum orbs, which means you are gonna start with a very strong opener. On top of that, they got a 5% buff to Shadow Form, which is not nothing, but this is just the Pandaria class design. Shadow Priest in MoP, once they get a lot of haste and mastery, is absolutely nasty, and of course, because we're talking about people on Dragon Soul gear, even though we are 85, right? They are beyond those thresholds. So what you're gonna see here, if you wanna take a bit of an analogy of what is gonna happen to MoP, this is what Siege of Orgrimmar more or less will look like, because this is what happens when you get a lot of haste for your level and a lot of mastery for your level and you hit all those thresholds. Speaking of that, I wanna call my friend Go right here because he told me he doesn't wanna play MoP because he says that the Boomkin is gonna be trash. Now, he's a Boomkin main and he says that about every single expansion ever, and here we are with the Boomkin at number 4, and a very strong number 4. Look at the distance between Unholy Death Knight and number 4. Now, the Moonkin got a gigantic buff. Their Moonkin form got doubled to 20% extra damage. That is not nothing. That's a 9% increase in overall damage. And on top of that, they became much stronger cleavers, because now they can put Moonfire on several targets and they can still get the same shooting stars procs. So like they get a lot more procs for instant star surges, which is obviously a lot of boom boom. So regardless of the gear levels we're gonna be in Pandaria early on, the Boomkin is gonna eat pretty freaking good. So I wanna know your excuse now, Boomkins. I really wanna know. Now, when it comes to the Unholy Death Knight, they got no changes whatsoever, and they were already a very strong class in Dragon Soul, obviously. And for the most part, they did not change a lot from Cataclysm to MoP, which is good, right? Like, it's what I said about like the Fire Mage, for example. If the class is already working very well, why would you change it? I think they made the right decision not changing the Fire Mage from Cataclysm to MoP. The rotation was pretty much perfect and everybody loved it. right? The Unholy Death Knight is in very much that position. I wouldn't say that the Unholy Death Knight was for everybody, and I wouldn't say that everybody loved it, but Death Knights like that rotation and they like that playstyle, and it made sense and it worked very well, so why would you change it? That's basically the Unholy Death Knight in a nutshell. I do not expect them to be very strong at the early stages of MoP though. I expect them to be pretty weak actually. Frost would be a good idea for you if you're interested in that. And after that, number 5, my dear Arcane Mage. I am very hyped for this. Arcane Mage is already beating Fire, the traditional king of Cataclysm. Don't get me wrong, Arcane was always pretty decent, but it was always below Fire, but not anymore. The rotation got simplified a lot for Arcane. Arcane actually makes a lot more sense now. You got like what, 4 buttons, maybe 5 buttons if you consider the 2 phases and whatnot. Keep in mind, they got no changes whatsoever so far, and they are already pumping. And Fire will also pump, don't get me wrong. Now Fire needs some freaking crit to come online, which is very unique for casters. Most casters do not stack crit and Fire Mages do. And Arcane is gonna come online pretty much instantly. They do not do anything that is special. They do not need haste, they do not need crit, they do not really need mastery. Mastery is just more damage, of course mastery is good. They will just work out of the box in MoP. So if anything, I expect the Arcane Mage to do even better at the start of MoP. And it will be probably the spec of choice for every mage for like the first tier. Of course, by Throne of Thunder, Fire starts picking up steam, picking up flame, so to speak. I don't know, it's late, I cannot make pawns anymore. Now, the specs in the middle, I feel a lot less confident talking about. We can see, for example, that Beast Mastery is respectably very close to Marksmanship, which is the number 1 pumper right now in the pre-patch. Marksmanship is rather weak in MoP proper, and it only comes up like in Siege of Orgrimmar again. And there was no measures, no changes. Actually, they reverted the only change to Hunters in MoP. So yeah, Marksmanship is not gonna be doing hot in MoP proper. Beast Mastery, however, is picking up a lot of steam. Survival is all the way at the bottom, which is, you cannot see that, can you? There you go. Survival is all the way at the bottom right now, which is crazy. Survival Hunter being so broken in MoP is the main reason that they did all these changes, or at least they claim that is the reason. The real reason is they wanted to buff the Red Paladin for Agrent. We know that. They will never allow Red Paladins to be bad. I always say, man, you gotta main Red Paladins, you're never gonna get nerfed. But Beast Mastery moved up like 4 spots from before the pre-patch to now, and it will absolutely shred. People are sleeping on the Beast Mastery, those fools. Those fools are sleeping on the Beast Mastery Hunter. They don't believe me when I say it. Beast Mastery is gonna destroy some fights. Now, of course, like most logs are very biased towards single target damage, but if you wanna top the in-game meters, Beast Mastery is gonna have like probably even beyond the Monology Warlock, it will probably be the best AoEer in the game early on. Because just like the Arcane Mage in their own little way, they do not really need anything, they just do Beast Cleave, and Beast Cleave is that stupid AoE damage, and that will not change. Now, we can talk about some of the losers of the situation here, some of the people that I think still need some buff. I know Enhancement got a buff. By the looks of the data, Enhancement is doing very poorly. I do not expect Enhancement to be at the very bottom anymore when MoP proper comes out, but I do expect the Enhancement Shaman to be below the Elemental Shaman, especially for the average player, because it is more complex to play, and you also gotta keep human error in mind. I think Elemental is a lot easier to pilot, and it will do more damage. I don't like this reality, I know, but I feel that the Enhancement Shaman is just a worse Elemental Shaman right now. Maybe I am wrong. I know it is very hard to theory craft all the changes they put into the Shaman, but Enhancement in particular, it only got a small buff to Storm Strike. I do not see how that would change a B tier spec all the way to the top, like people are saying. Honestly, I think that's just bogus. If you got numbers that you can actually share to me, if you got like actual sim data that you can show to me, I would love to see it. We might even do a follow-up video, but I do not see it, man. I do not see the Enhancement Shaman doing well. Sorry. Now, one class that surprised me seeing it that low is the Warrior. Fury Warrior and Arms Warrior are doing pretty much the same amount of damage right now. They are all the way down there like C tier. For the most part, Warriors did not get nerfed. As a matter of fact, the pre-patch changes do not do anything here. It was a buff to Fury. Fury was kinda weak in Cataclysm, so it makes sense that they got a buff in here, and you can see that it's doing better than Arms. And people tell me, by the way, that this is not a small change. This is a huge change, okay? Like, the balance changes for Fury Warrior are basically more Fury uptime, more enraged uptime, sorry. And your mastery is that when you get enraged, you do more damage. So I know it doesn't sound like a lot to get 33% more length on Berserk Enrage. It actually translates into a crap ton of damage. And even then, with the huge buff that they got, it doesn't look like it's doing much to help the Fury Warrior. The Arms Warrior, which was traditionally one of the strongest specs in Dragon Soul, is all the way at the bottom now. When it comes to the MoP Arms Warrior compared to the Cataclysm Arms Warrior, they both love crit, okay? They both love crit. But in MoP, you need crit. Also, Arms in particular, this is not a problem for Fury that much. They are missing Bloodbath. And Bloodbath, the last talent that you get at level 90, is a huge chunk of your damage that they are missing. So do not be disheartened if you're an Arms main, because Arms is gonna get a crucial talent and it will go up by quite a lot. It is like 20% more damage. Most last row talents are kinda useless for most classes, but in the case of the Arms Warrior, it is actually a ton of damage. Now, if we do a little eyeball math in here and we look at the Arms Warrior, and we put 20% more damage, that would be a score of like 75 or so. That would put it along here, right where the marksmanship hunter is, right about here, okay? So that's more or less what you can expect at phase 1 in MoP. I would say, like, middle of the pack. They are gonna keep picking up over time, of course. Fury is not gonna do well in phase 1. I know they got a buff, it is not going to do well in phase 1. They need their crit and they need their haste and they got nothing. More uptime on Enrage will obviously help. It is not going to change the needle for Fury. It needs a lot more than that in phase 1 to work. It will not work. Arms, however, is gonna do pretty well. And finally, I guess we can talk about it. Frost Mage is eating a big ol' cannoli. It's just all the way at the bottom there. It stayed at the bottom all the way through freaking Cataclysm, really. And I can see the logic behind changing the classes, because Frost in original Cataclysm wasn't that bad. Okay, Frost kept getting nerfed and nerfed and nerfed across the lifespan of Cataclysm. If I recall correctly, like tier 11 back in proper Cataclysm, Frost was the best spec for a while. If you could get crit cap on a Frost Mage, you could do a lot of damage back then. That is not the case, so even if they put pre-patch changes in MoP, which I think is stupid, I could see like how reverting some of the nerfs for the classes that got nerfed mid-expansion could work. The problem with modern WoW is that classes break. The balancing of the classes is designed around having the best gear at the moment, which makes sense, but if we go for last patch balance, and there's 2 tiers before that, right? Like, it's gonna by definition be imbalanced for those 2 previous tiers, which I prefer to put in Warlords or Draenor changes in the classes. I prefer that, but I am the loser in this battle. People don't seem to see it that way. I get it. However, the Frost Mage is also looking to do poorly. I expect it to do a little better. They have some things up their sleeve. For example, they are the better AoE out of all the mages, because the true AoE of both Arcane and Fire is kinda poor. It is not great, and Frost is better, so they got that going on, and that's pretty much it. If I were to guess, I think it's gonna do just the same as Fire, because Fire needs some crit and mastery to work properly, and it will not have it at the start of the expansion, of course. So if you are a Frost enjoyer, I'm afraid that for 2 expansions in a row, you got the shaft. You got like screwed every single time. Blizzard will never allow Fire Mage to be bad. It is the most popular spec, and honestly, it is very easy to balance because the design is very good. I believe that the thing that made Arcane good in MoP is just that it got simplified and it became a lot easier to balance. Frost in its current iteration is very hard to make work. I think Blizzard is scared of buffing Frost even a little bit. There is a can of worms in there that they don't want to mess with. So, I don't know, maybe they do get buffed. I guess you can hope for it. I think Blizzard doesn't want to buff them. And maybe for good reason. Sucks for the Frost boys, I'm afraid. I think it is pretty interesting. Now, we do not have a good baseline of what the pre-patch was before the class changes, I'm afraid, so we cannot really compare what the Blizzard post-launch changes were, how they impacted the results here, and we are obviously not gonna know the full results of the changes until the proper expansion is out, and even then we're gonna need like 2 weeks until people do the fights properly and they get good gear, so we can get like actual good data. But I want to tell you that for all the people that thought that changing every single class in MoP would lead to more balance, this is probably the most uneven balance distribution I have seen in Cataclysm since launch. Let's hope they know what they are doing, because I don't think this is as easy to fix as they think it is. I think there is a lot of things that can go wrong in the balancing, and I wouldn't want to have 20 rogues in my freaking raid. That would kinda suck. And I know I got a very diverse mix of classes in here, maybe a lot of warriors of course, but pretty much players of every class, because I make guides on pretty much everything I can right now, trying to do one for every spec. Will we make it in time for MoP? I don't know. But are you a beneficiary of these changes? Did you get a gigantic buff? Are you doing hot right now in the pre-patch? Or are you like a poor Frost Mage that got shafted for the 20th time in a row? Because I would hate to be that guy right now. Subscribe, join the Discord, and thank you for watching.